My name is Michael Tso. Thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to talk to you about Cloudian. Just want to briefly introduce some of my colleagues that are here. Over here with Paul, who is our CMO. Next to him is Vikram, who is in charge of product management and also partnerships. And going around the room, just exiting the room is Carol, who's in charge of partners. Over here is tech marketing, Philip, and also Gary Gasawara, who is in charge of engineering. So we will be getting deep and interesting for you guys today. Some of you saw we had a streaming video sort of earlier. That's a very interesting sort of end user application. It's actually a very famous zoo in the northern part of Japan called Asahiyama Zoo, where they basically sort of wired up some of these zoo sort of animals so that they're sort of providing 24/7 streaming sort of video of what it's like to be in a zoo. So it's really a 24/7 experience of a zoo. Very, very interesting. It's streaming massive amounts of data into a Cloudian hyperstore that's hosted at NTT East. So it's a very, very interesting application. So you can see here's a little penguin with a sort of penguin GoPro. You can see all kinds of things there. It's very interesting. So going on to the next slide. So a very brief overview of the company. We were founded about 4 years ago, backed by some top-tier investors, including Intel, Goldman Sachs, and also Fidelity. The company's DNA is from sort of building hyperscale messaging systems for very large mobile telcos like Docomo, SoftBank, Nextel, Vodafone, and so on. We are at 65 people right now. It's really sort of top-notch talent from companies like NetApp, EMC, Nexenda, etc. Mainly based around here in the Bay Area. We also have smaller offices in Tokyo, Beijing, and we recently started in EMEA as well. Just very briefly down here, we're very, very focused in terms of go-to-market is with a partner strategy. So the traditional storage based kind of channel partners, and also we bring the whole Amazon S3 ecosystem. So we have a lot of application, a lot of use cases, and a lot of partners that we also go to market with. So one of the things that's very interesting about us is that we have this very deep IP and deep experience that come from the days of sort of building very large scalable messaging systems. And we sort of got into this because we were storing sort of billions and billions of messages, storing them across different data centers, really mission critical stuff for very, very large telcos. And around 2009, 2010, we started noticing that most people started using, these smartphones. And once people start kind of using smartphones, it was clear that the shift of that data storage was moving from these mobile carriers out into the cloud. So that's how we started to look at the cloud as a very new and very interesting area for us to get into. So. You will hear in a lot more sort of detail later on, but our product was really architected with this kind of carrier grade kind of mentality. So we had very early on we had things like quality of service, right? That's actually a very critical feature for any telco, but also very important for enterprise, because you might have attackers, or you might have applications that just run wild and ends up stopping an entire system. So we have that built in from day one. We also have the fact that we can be distributed across data centers. That was built in from day one. So there's really nothing that we had to do for that in the future. And then also this concept of kind of separating protection policy from the data itself. That was all sort of architected in. And then I think you are all here because you want to hear a lot more detail. So I'm going to give you a preview of what's about to come. So we made 3 very important bets when we started on our sort of journey here. And the first bet is to go with Cassandra as the core sort of metadata and sort of distribution mechanism. That was made for a number of reasons, and you'll hear later on from Gary both the plus and also the minus of Cassandra. But what we liked most about Cassandra is that it has the most mileage on the code in terms of how to handle different kind of error cases when you start to go to more than one data center, right? So the multi-DC problem is a very hard problem. It's well studied in computer science, and there are no clean solutions, right? So essentially, Cassandra was the code base that had the most amount of mileage in terms of sort of dealing with all the different kind of issues that can happen. Our second bet is that we focused on Amazon S3 APIs, and we are the only object storage solution where we are natively S3. We don't have any other API. We don't have to do any translation. There are no gateways. Every node inside a Cloudian cluster runs Amazon APIs. That's all they have. And the reason why we went that way was because we sort of realized that as data grew, it actually became kind of less and less interesting how you store the data, but it's more and more interesting like what you can do with that data. So the application, the ecosystem that comes with the data is actually very, very key, right? So what you can do with data. So and in terms of cloud, in Amazon certainly has the largest amount of apps that work with their cloud, the number of developers, and really awesome set of SDKs that can be used to develop things quickly. So we really rallied around that from a very early stage. And then the third bet that we made was hybrid, and that was with the foresight that eventually some fashion of public storage will become free. Right, so we right now see that there are, Amazon, Microsoft, Google. I mean, all three of them competing on the cost of storage, and that will eventually be, driven down to zero. And but on the other hand, some amount of data. People is going to want to keep private for speed reasons, for privacy reasons, etc. So we believe from sort of day one that all storage eventually have to become hybrid. So you need to be able to move data sort of to and from different clouds and so on. And with the advent of a certain amount of free storage that can be had in the public cloud, whoever kind of doesn't have a hybrid story, their storage costs will become more expensive than the ones that can put 10 or 20% or 30% of data out into the almost free or free storage. So moving on, a lot of people sort of ask us, why do you have all these Japanese customers? Why are you better known in Japan than you're in the US, even though you actually based here in the U.S. So like, sort of any startup, fate has a lot to do with it, right? So if you go back to our website and look at the news column, you scroll way down, what you see is that we first announced our Cloudian storage product on March 11th, 2011. And exactly. So after we announced that, about 2 hours later, the third largest earthquake in recorded history happened. Right. So here is this big jolt. Right. And here's a tsunami that happened. And here's a photo that I.
Your fault?
It's all your fault. Exactly. It's a truly earth-shattering announcement. Right. We announced it and whoops. And then. This was actually a photo taken from my office at the time in Tokyo, and I happened to be there on a trip, and you can see there was smoke coming out, and that turned out to be like a refinery that caught on fire immediately after the quake. So it's very interesting. So when that happened. Of course, we got zero news coverage. Right? No one talked about our earth-shaking announcement. But what happens afterwards is about 2 to 3 weeks later, we started getting calls from companies like NTT, from Nifty, like these very large Japanese carriers, because people started thinking about what are we going to do with our data? Because they have suddenly realized that they need to have distribution, right? One of our customers over there had 2 data centers that had synchronous storage between them, but they had to be within 2,000 meters of one another. Well, once it is quick, they had this problem where these 2 data centers were on the same power grid, right? So they could go down together without power, and of course they got diesel generators and stuff. But actually, after an earthquake,
you can't get fuel delivered.
You cannot get gas, right? There's no fuel. So anyway, people started thinking, maybe we need to have these things. So we had a very very good push there, really, from this. And what ended up happening is that we actually spent more than 2 years working on a product with guys at NTT to make it very, very high quality. So you actually did not hear a lot about us until last year, probably, because we actually did not enter this market until about a year ago. But it's been very exciting since then. It's been a very exciting 12 months where we have just grown a lot. It's been a sort of phenomenal amount of momentum. We are managing over 20 petabytes, and it's growing very fast. We were the fastest mover in the IDC sort of chart here. We moved like a full ring, essentially. And really seeing a lot of very active trials, growth, customers. Last year, we grew our end user count by over 300%, and in the last 3 months or so, we have also grown our sales force by about 300%. So you will see a lot more activities coming. And really, just to share with you that not only does the product work, it's been in operation for about 3.5 years now, and it's also proven to work sort of at scale. So we just showed a couple examples here, but we have a lot more than this. But these two. So on NTT, so the one that I was showing you before, that was actually powered by NTT East. So they have one of the services has actually over 2.3 million users on it on a single hyperstore cluster. So that shows you that the multi-tenancy certainly scales well. All right. Oops, sorry. And then another one of our customers, Nifty, they are mainly sort of going after enterprise, and they have over 3,500 different enterprises on a single hyperstore system. Now that one's actually very interesting because we looked at some of the enterprises and see what they're doing with it, right? So one of the companies is a online gaming company. So it's social networking, social gaming. So they're storing a lot of very small objects like hats and swords and whatever. So they're sort of like 1K a piece, right? Very small, a lot of them, and they need them sort of back fast because when you're trying to render a screen, you need to get all these little things. So we're being hit by these small things. But they also have customers that are doing backup. So they have these huge files, right, that we have to deal with. So we have a single platform that's serving them all, and it's been extremely exciting, very, very interesting the way it works. So in terms of...
So Michael, the NTT is a single Cloudian ring. Is that how I say that correct?
Actually, they have 3 different systems. So they have ones that are focused at consumers, and ones that targeted after enterprise. And NTT is actually a very big company. So we are in NTT Communications, which is more of a B2B Global part of NTT, and then we're also inside NTT East. So that one here specifically is actually NTT East. So that's your sort of domestic home fiber, kind of business. Yeah.
So that 3,500 tenants is 3,500 end customers that have all their respective end users inside those organizations for their different application workloads.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So these are 3,500 companies basically. Yeah. Okay. So we do software and we also do appliance. We in terms of company's DNA, we are a software-defined storage company, right? That's what we do. But we also ship our software on sort of pre-configured appliances, right? Because that is
that's why how people want to buy it.
Exactly. That makes it easier to consume, easier to expand, etc. So it's exciting times. Storage is changing forever, right? It's I can't think of a more exciting time than now, and I think we all see the squeeze coming, right? So on the one side you have this expanding just amount of data, so like the penguin can, right? That's just a lot of data that's being created, and it makes sense to store in some kind of scale object storage. And then at the high end you have flash that's really taken the hot I/O data kind of out of your traditional SAN and NAS. So once you, with flash, take that sort of hot data into the host itself, then you really start to think about, for your next layer of storage, you want to think about scale, you want to think about sort of easy of moving data, how to promote demo data, you really have sort of much more of a squeeze towards this middle, right? So the way we see this is the vast majority of the world's data in 4 to 5 years' time will be kept on some form of object storage, right? That will become the predominant way of storing data. Our vision is to have smart data storage. What that means is that rather than being focused on how the data is stored onto the media itself. So when we talk about storage today, we tend to talk about things like blocks or things like storage servers and so on. But really we need to kind of take a step up, and instead of focusing on a storage device, we need to focus on the data itself. So start thinking about, how do I get value out of the data? Where does this data item live? What kind of properties, what kind of policies do I want to deal with on a data object by object basis? So that's really, really key in terms of this kind of evolution of focusing on how to store data in sort of different silos to how to put data onto this kind of transformed kind of data fabric that allow the data to be promoted and sort of demoted throughout. So in order to achieve this sort of vision, there are 3 main areas that we believe has to be done, and we will be diving into each one of these 3 coming up in more detail. So the first one is really cost efficiency. In order to sort of manage the volume of data that's coming out, we really have to sort of drive down the cost, and that means software defined. That means commodity servers. And one of the things that people don't sort of really talk about when they focus on just hardware is that the management cost, the human cost of setting up new storage is actually a very, very significant part of it. So we need to make the software-defined storage self-expanding, very easy to configure. All you have to do is plug it in, and it should just do it by itself. You should not need storage admins every day to be doing kind of data migration, setup and all that kind of stuff. It needs to be automated. So that cost is a really key part of this. The second point is that we believe that all storage would have to be hybrid. So if you don't have a hybrid storage, your storage is going to cost too much because you're not taking advantage of the free storage that's going to be out there. And then thirdly, really it's about how to decrease the time to value for your data. Right, how to use the sort of available applications that's out there to get information, to allow you to make decisions. So the days of kind of taking static data and then analyzing it offline and so on, it's really going to be in the past. People's data is going to be coming in streams. We're going to have to analyze them on the fly. We're going to have to make decisions on the fly. So you will hear a lot more about these 3 going forward, and I'll hand over now to Gary. Yeah.
Is that something you started with this view, or is that something when you talk to your customers evolved during?
Yeah, it's really a little bit of both. When we started, it's fair to say that we started more from the sort of bottoms up in terms of thinking how to store the data, reliably, how to make it very easy to manage, and so on. So around here, we certainly had the assumption that all storage have to be hybrid. Now, this smart data part really came from a lot of conversation with customers, right? Because when they start storing data, they want to know, so what can I do with this data, right? So, and we have been very well positioned for this because of the S3 API, right? Because they don't have to develop anything. There are things they can just buy off the shelf, or they can just download for free. Yeah.